Evening. I'd like to call to order on the November 18th, 2024 regular meeting for the Lebanon Board of Education. Please rise and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Color guard. Halt. Left. Face. Carry. Colors. Present. Colors.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Carry. Colors. Order. Colors. Colors. Colors turn. Arch.
Thank you. We will let them join us. Do a brief introduction. Thanks for joining us tonight. If you would all please introduce yourself, what grade you're in, and what you love most about ROTC.
I am Senior Airman Sylvia Whitmer. I'm in 10th grade, and I love the community of Bronson.
Good evening. I am Cadet Staff Sergeant Pizza. What I love most about ROTC is how disciplined it is, how it is hoping to become.
My name is Cadet Campbell. I'm a senior airman, and I just love the community we build together.
My name is Cadet Master Sergeant Evan Fox. I'm a senior, and one thing I love about ROTC is the family aspect of it. You know, everybody knows everybody else. It's really great. You know, there's rarely a time where you don't know somebody. So it's just nice, you know, community.
Great, thank you. Thanks for coming tonight. We appreciate it.
That's it. Thanks for being here, guys.
Thanks.
Mrs. Irvin, roll call, please.
Mr. Lane?
Here.
Mr. McCutcheon?
Here.
Mrs. Cope?
Here.
Mrs. Dalton?
Here.
Mr. Gliotti?
Here.
Item number 4, adoption of the agenda. I need a motion to adopt the agenda as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Any questions or comments? Roll call, please.
Mr. Gliotti?
Yes.
Mrs. Dalton?
Yes.
Mrs. Cope?
Yes.
Mr. McCutcheon?
Yes.
Mr. Lane?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Item number 5, I need a motion to approve the minutes and signing from the regular meeting on October 21st, 2024.
So moved.
Second?
Any questions, comments, or corrections from the minutes? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Mrs. Cope?
Yes.
Mr. McCutcheon?
Yes.
Mr. Lane?
Yes.
Mr. Gliotti?
Yes.
Mrs. Dalton?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Item number 6, communication reports. A is hearing of the public. We do have one tonight. Just as a reminder, presentation is limited to 5 minutes per person. Any resident of the Lebanon City School District having a legitimate interest in the actions of the board may participate during the public portion of a meeting. All statements shall be directed to the presiding officer. No person may address or question board members individually, and the presiding officer may interrupt, warn, or terminate a participant's statements when the statement is too lengthy, personally directed, repetitive, abusive, obscene, or irrelevant. So, Mr. Gonzalez, if you would like to go up to the podium and please state your name and your address. And the time is yours.
Juan Gonzalez, 6 Oakwood Avenue. Here we are, part 5 of holding the board and the superintendent accountable. I know these are just more quotes from people in our community that you guys will discard as not being valid. But one reads is that Ivy Wagner Yonkman, I pulled both my kids out of Lebanon, one junior high, the other high school, for bullying. Here's another one, Haley Rain Bailey. Definitely not zero instances. My daughter had issues with a girl for years. The girl went as far as cutting my daughter's hair. I guess it only depends on what your definition of bullying is. Here's Nick Waldner. This is just last week, he put this on here. Had an issue last week, was supposedly taken care of. Kids wouldn't talk about it to us very much, like they were told not to by the principal. Another person, zero instances with question marks. I've had multiple instances. My children have been involved in that escalated to the administration. Like I said the last meeting, these things go on and on and on. I only have 5 minutes to talk about it right now. Another thing I thought, here we go again. At first, I didn't think the police would show up. I thought maybe someone had told Isaac, your law department had told Isaac Siebert that it's probably not a good idea to try to violate my civil rights by intimidating me with the Lebanon police. Isaac Siebert, through my investigation, was the actual person to contact Lebanon police in order to try to intimidate me from being here. I'm not going to act inappropriately ever. You'll never get that out of me, Isaac Siebert. I'll let you do all that. Another thing that I want to speak of, your lead investigator, Isaac Siebert over here, your guys' lead investigator has been doing some more investigating. And the fact of the matter is that I coach a 16U travel softball team, and he has somehow come to find out who members of my team are that go to Lebanon High School, and his daughter is actually confronting these girls about what's going on here. I find that to be very inappropriate, and it seems like the apple doesn't fall too far, in my opinion. I'd appreciate it if you would leave my players completely out of this. This is between me, the good people, and the community of Lebanon, and the school board and Isaac Siebert. So yeah, I'd appreciate if you could cease with that. Another thing I want to speak of is who funds the Lebanon police to be here out of the blue. I don't remember the Lebanon police being here any of the other meetings that I've been to. So I'm kind of curious who foots the bill on that, Mr. Superintendent. Does that come right out of your pocket?
You're not supposed to direct anybody.
Yes, sir. I doubt it does. I have a feeling that's footed by John Q. Public. And I bet there's a lot more that goes on behind the scenes. If you're willing to do everything you do here in front of our whole community, I'm sure there's way more going on behind the scenes. To let the board know, I have contacted my state rep, Adam Matthews. Mr. Matthews, I would appreciate it if you will deal with Mr. Siebert accordingly in this matter. These kids that are being bullied by teachers and by other kids to where they decide to hurt themselves or whatever, it's out of control. It's going on every day. These kids know what's going on right here. You know, like the last meetings, my daughter, if anybody doesn't know me, Juan Gonzalez, my daughter is Juliana Gonzalez. She was bullied to where I didn't know if she was going to be alive the next day by her high school softball coach, Brian Kendall. I literally didn't know if she would be alive the next day. And that's why I'm here. And I'm glad there's an audience of some sort here so that you can relay what's going on. These people up here cover it up, specifically the superintendent. I have so much testimony, hundreds of people that will testify to what goes on in the bullying and how he covers it up. He gave 0 instances of bullying at the high school level.
Mr. Gonzalez, that's 5 minutes.
Nobody believes that. Nobody does.
I will correct you on one thing. Isaac, yes, he did request the police to be here, but that was not his choice. The board members asked for that. It is not something that Mr. Severs did on his own.
Oh, so what was the reasoning behind that? Have I shown that I'm gonna conduct myself any other way than what I'm doing right now?
To be honest with you, we don't know. So
You don't know.
I don't know you other than these meetings.
Maybe if I was an 80-year-old man, would that be the same thing? Because you don't know. You don't know what anybody's gonna do.
Correct.
But if any of my
Your
actions.
5 minutes is up for tonight. You
I
can.
bet it is, Mr. Knight.
Well, it actually was up when I
bet
first
is.
said it.
That's all right. Hey, there's more to come though. I want the people of Lebanon to keep this in mind because when it's time to vote, we have to clean house to fix this issue right here. That's the only way.
All right, your 5 minutes is up. Thank you. B, student board member update, Mr. Parlett.
All right, this is the update from Lebanon High School for the month of November 2024. To start it off, we have senior dress-up day for Halloween. LHS senior dress-up day was a major success, lots of participation and fun costumes. Next slide.
I'm sorry. I'm just trying to, it wasn't really, they weren't really able to hear it before. Sorry. Continue.
I think we're done with the podium anyway for tonight.
I'm sorry.
We're done with the podium anyway for
Okay,
tonight.
no problem.
Next up, we have Salsa Nati. In October, Spanish 4 and AP Spanish students attended a private salsa dancing class taught by Salsa Nati at the Clifton Cultural Arts Center. First, they learned about and got to try playing the different instruments and rhythms used in salsa and Latin music.
How many kids participate in that, do you know?
I think I don't have an exact number.
Are those all Lebanon students in that picture?
Yes.
So quite a few.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Next up, we have the girls soccer team. Congrats to our girls soccer team for winning the district championship. Lebanon beat Centerville 2-1 and advanced to the regional semifinals, where they had a close fight with Mason, ending 2-1 Mason. Congrats to a great
Isaac,
season.
can I add something to that slide?
Yeah.
Several of us attended that game, and the fan turnout on the Lebanon side was very impressive. So appreciate everybody that came out to support the ladies that night.
Yeah. Next up, we have our Walk of Champions. LHS celebrated our OHSAA state cross-country qualifiers, senior Hannah Glassmeyer and junior Kendall Heffel, last Friday with a Walk of Champions. On Saturday at the state meet, Hannah and Kendall placed 91st and 92nd, respectively, out of 165 runners. Congrats to both of these runners on a great season. Football playoffs. Football completed their regular season at 6-4, which earned us a home playoff game. We defeated Northmont 42-21, making our first playoff victory in 22 years and our first home playoff victory ever. We hosted another playoff game versus Doublewood Kaufman to finish off a great season. Congrats. Marching Band. The Lebanon Marching Band completed a remarkable season with competitions at West Claremont and Lucas Oil Stadium in Indianapolis. Congrats to Michelle Crockett, David Iannelli, Wes Michael, Stephanie Brown, and all our students for their hard work and resiliency. You make us warrior proud.
I want to add here that our marching band program has fought through a lot of issues this year, and we're very resilient. And it was exciting to see the progression from the first football game to where they were at the end of the season. And so I cannot thank Mrs. Crockett, Mr. Iannelli, Mr. Michael, and Mrs. Brown enough for their leadership. They changed courses on their entire show partway through the season, added a different show, and it was a great year. So just want to thank those folks publicly. Thanks for having this on this slide, Isaac.
Bridges. We had our annual Bridges event this past weekend. Special thanks to Lauren Miller and the members of the faculty and staff who gave 48 students a life-changing experience at Bridges 2024, a tradition unlike any other. The Harlem Wizards came to Lebanon to face off against the teachers from the district as a fundraiser for the women's basketball program. It was an amazing turnout and such a fun night. Then upcoming events, we have NHS inductions this Thursday, November 21st, and then Thanksgiving break starting Monday of next week, November 25th.
Thanks, Isaac. And on to superintendent report for the other Isaac.
A couple things I just wanted to touch base on. We are, as a district, very fortunate to be asked by the Vandegrift family and willing to support them in the loss of Coach Vandegrift. And so Friday at 11 o'clock here at the DPC in the auditorium, we're hosting the funeral ceremony for Coach V. And it's going to be an opportunity for us as a community to support the family. And then following that, there will be a victory lap. The family wanted to take Coach on one lap around the field afterwards down at the stadium named in his honor. And so that'll be held here on Friday. And just want to make sure that everybody's aware of that. Thursday evening, the viewing will be held at the Lebanon Presbyterian Church from 4 to 8, I believe. And so if anybody has any questions about what that looks like on Friday, please let me know. But as a district, we've been working with the funeral home and the church to be able to provide that service for the family. So that's one thing I wanted to say. The second thing, and I sent the board this email this week as it relates to the bullying report and what gets published on our district website. And so the district for the last 12 years has been following the guidelines of the Ohio Department of Education and guidance that was given to them. So the bullying report currently, as it stands today, is only reporting students who have been suspended or expelled for bullying, because that was the guidance we received in 2012, that the report should only indicate if the bullying led to a suspension or an expulsion. After last month, and after some discussions I'd had with other families who had requested to speak with me about the bullying report, we began working with our district legal counsel. We reviewed our board policy, we reviewed the state law, and we're going to begin making some changes to that bullying report. Not that what we were doing before, it wasn't intentionally misleading, it was the guidance that we were given at the time. But feel like the guidance that we have in our board policy and from our legal counsel at this point in time would modify that slightly. So effective immediately, we're going to begin looking at that report. Additionally, how do we code things in the system? Like last month, I stated that the definition of bullying is very specific. It has to be persistent, pervasive, one-to-one, directed in that way. So a lot of things get reported as bullying, and then they get entered into the system as something else. So it may be not persistent and pervasive. It may not be something that's going on for a period of time. It may be that it's simply an abuse of others. And so it goes down as abuse of others, or it goes down as unwanted contact. And that's just how the system works. And so if families report bullying, we investigate, but it doesn't always end up as being a bullying claim, even if discipline was issued. So like always, we are constantly looking at what we do as a district and modifying if we feel like there's needs to do that. I share that information with the board, and I wanted to share it publicly as a way of answering back the questions that have been asked the last couple of months. I think it's worth noting that in 2012, I was a high school football teacher and I was a high school math teacher and a football coach in a different district, not leading this district when that decision was made. So I'm not responsible for the decision of 2012. I am responsible for how we act and how we report things going forward now. And as a district, we are looking into this situation so we can make sure that it accurately reflects the numbers that we have. So anybody have any questions about that?
Thank you.
Moving on to D, board committee reports. We'll start with student achievement liaison, Mrs. Dalton.
Okay. Let's see. Okay. This first slide, this is the November report. I just wanted to inform everyone of a book study taking place. There's 4 different book studies. You can attend one or all if you want, but I think it's a great event. It's the second one that the district has held on educating parents on student mental wellness. And this one is Parenting in the Digital Era, but that was a podcast. Now, I think the book is a different book.
Yeah, the book is The Anxious Generation.
That's right, okay.
This is just a reminder that Isaac Sievers needs to go finish reading for the book study this week. But if you can come in the evening and you'd like to come in the evening on the 20th, we'd love to have you at Coffee Caravan. If the morning works better for you because of evening activities with your children, we'll have the same opportunity the next morning. If you just love the book and you want to hang out and talk, feel free to come both times. So the first 2 sections there will be about the first 2 chapters of that book because of when it kind of went out, start slow, and then get back together in January. I'm looking forward to the discussion with our community about it.
Yes, and if you haven't read the book, you probably can still come and just listen because there might be an exchange of ideas. So nice event that we're having there. Just some things that have gone on just this past week. The community builders took place. There were 25 students and 6 staff members that were honored and got to hear all about the good things that they're doing in the classroom and around our schools. And congratulations to the football team for making the playoffs and the band for providing the entertainment, of course, for that event. And we got to hear about the great postseason results and first time in a while to get back in there. So that's great.
My mouse, sorry, just got stuck in the section of the picture there, Lord. Apologize. It was
That was the opening of the stadium.
highlighting some of these joggers. Apologize.
Yes. Okay, Bowman celebrates Veterans Day on Veterans Day, and I believe there were 130 veterans that came to be honored at this event, and the students were all excited, wrote thank you letters, and was a very nice day for all. And thank you for your service. Then notable events taking place. Very intermediate students showed support for students in Georgia impacted by the hurricanes, and you can see up in the right-hand corner, those are some letters that they wrote, along with students down at the bottom and all the letters of support. Just knowing like what others are going through in times of difficult times. And Donovan students were excited to watch the annual pumpkin drop, and that's always a big event. And then Bowman students and parents participated in Glow Readers, and the next page I have, one down. I have pictures of this. And so it was sponsored by the Lions Club. They provided all the books, and students and parents got to go around all the classrooms and participate in different events surrounding reading, just to make reading fun and get parents and students involved. So I think that was a fun event, and thanks to the Lions for sponsoring that. And then the other thing that went on was the student-directed clubs called SPLURBs. That's on the next page. And that is a nice thing that they're doing at the junior high, because students can get together, kind of form their own clubs with the direction of some teachers. And there's Pokemon clubs, there's yoga, there's journalizing, there's community service clubs, board games, sports, crafts, and more. And it's just a way for students to connect with each other and with and meet new friends. So I think that's a real great thing that a lot of teachers are probably dedicating a lot of their own time to these events. So we're grateful and thankful for that. And then what else? Lebanon High School in their food and nutrition class visited Donovan, and they did a little peer-to-peer cooking class where they would show the younger students how to make cupcakes. So, and I'm sure that they really look up to those high school students. And then the junior high had the production of Frozen, which was a nice event. So,
Thank you.
yeah,
Thank
you're
you.
welcome.
CAC Committee, Mr. Gliotti and Mr. McCutcheon.
So we met prior to this board meeting at 5 o'clock. Present was Tina Flegg, Mike Faulkner, Bill Haynes, Mr. Gliotti, Mrs. Irvin and myself. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail on this because I know Karen's got a presentation, but the things that I picked up on that I noted in looking at the data that she gave me is the biggest difference in it is 2023 is now completely gone, and it's moved on to, we've added 2029 on the far right side. The good news is it also looks like that adding in 2029, it's going to push possibly the need for new money into 2028 now because of changes in expenditures, primarily insurance, which I thought was really great. And that was the gist of what we did.
Anything to add?
No, just that I think that the district needs to know that Mrs. Irvin emphasized continued cost controls and a lot of responsible attention to controlling costs above and beyond everything that we're doing. So being good fiscal stewards of the taxpayer dollar. It's continuing, it's being monitored, it's ongoing.
Thank you. C, Legislative Liaison, Mrs. Cope.
Since the election's over, we are now, the State House has multiple lame duck sessions that are going on. So right now, the Senate had some committee hearings, and the House is not returning until December. So there's really nothing to report except perhaps keeping an eye on maybe some things that might be in committee that, if there's things that you see in there that you would want to contact your local government.
Okay.
That's it.
And Warren County Career Center, we have our regular meeting this Thursday, but we did meet, I think it was 2 weeks ago, had a work session, and part of a large part of that meeting centered around ways to increase student capacity at the Career Center without having to go back to the taxpayers. And we believe that with the recent readjustment on the appraised value or assessed values of houses, there may be some money to do some of that work, not to the extent that was requested with the bond 2 years ago, last year, but to do some of it and increase that to an extent. So more to come on that. We also, I was able to attend their version of the Veterans Day. Fortunately, they did theirs the prior Friday, so I missed the one at Donovan because we were at the state school board conference, but I was able to attend the one at the Career Center. They did a great job there as well. So moving on to item 7, I need a motion to approve A through I.
So moved.
Second.
Mrs. Irvin.
Okay. So we have quite a bit to go through. I'll try to keep it pretty high level. I did speak with the CAC committee and get into some more of the details, but please interrupt me if you have questions. So taking a look, jumping right in, we have our last forecast, our most recent forecast was May of 2024. And as was previously mentioned, this included 2023, but only went up to 2028. We landed at about 8.9 million at the end of the 28 school year. And the next slide will show you, this is our updated forecast. So as of November, we've shifted off that year of 2023, added a brand new projected year. So we have 1 year of actual and then 5 years of anticipated projected. And you'll notice, and actually you can go on to the next slide, the cash balance here is scary similar. And I told CAC committee, I took a second glance because I was doubting myself. It's very close. And we'll talk about the biggest reasons for that. But the differences between May and November, not a lot has shifted as far as the legislative changes, but we had significant property tax changes, and then we had a lot of benefits changes that we'll talk through. So here, trend line, just looking at the trend lines, go back to the first slide, yes, yes. So you'll see that the trend lines are still downward slopes, right? So they look very similar as well. Now, if you fast forward, Mr. Severs, to the next slide,
Interrupt you on that slide,
Yeah.
though. So are we seeing, and you may get to this, but is the added year is that as a result of the new assessed values? Is that how we got pushed out a year to the same number?
we will get there, yes. The short answer is no, but we will get there. Okay, so taking a note that trend line stayed pretty relatively the same. You'll see here in the black box, we are still deficit spending. We are still spending more money than we anticipate receiving. So every year, including this year, we are going to spend more money than we receive. That's a problem, as you know. The good news is we still think we can push out the need for new money by a full calendar school year, a fiscal year, not calendar year. So in the May forecast, I'd circled the same column, but it was fiscal year 27. Now that is 28. And what we think is going on here, the revenue difference, Mr. Severs, can you go back one slide again? Sorry to jump around. If you look at the revenue difference, there's not a tremendous amount, except for this first year, there's a larger amount. Woo!
Sorry.
Because we received the pipeline settled. So we received what we were thinking we were going to receive there. That shifted. We moved that. We thought we were going to get it this school year, but we got it last school year. So we shifted that out. And then to your question, Mr. Lane, we did get more property tax revenue this year than anticipated. The challenge here is, and I explained this to CAC, we actually got more than we billed in property tax. That's due to delinquencies, so people catching up payments. We've done this for the last 3 years where we've gotten more than we billed. That can't continue. We can only collect what we're going to bill. So this last year we did get more, not necessarily related to anything other than those delinquency payments. What is actually driving these figures are the expense side. We had budgeted in May for our insurance benefits a 10% growth into this new calendar year. So starting January, we had budgeted 10% growth. That came in less than 4%. So I put in a 4%. That's a big difference in that first year. And it grows so exponentially because that is our second largest expense, our first being our people, right, our wages. So it grew so much just in the first year that was less $1 million. That grows over that 5-year period, pushes us out, so we're achieving about the same cash balance in 2029 that we originally had thought we would get in 2028. That's the primary driver. I will also say we haven't budgeted for any staffing changes for 27 through 29, but we also haven't budgeted any changes that might come out from a revenue perspective on any state funding changes or any property tax changes. So if the legislature makes any changes to our current funding mechanisms, those could dramatically shift this forecast. So I always say the further out you go, the less reliable you are. Of course, my goal is to get those more in alignment because it is such a dramatic shift in that last year. But also that's very challenging when literally every 6 months things are shifting as much as they are. So great news, pushing out the need for new money another year. A lot to do with that insurance shift. Hopefully that trend will continue. We've had some really good renewal rates in the last few years, so we're hoping that will continue. But as was mentioned, we are still trying very hard to make sure that we're spending appropriately, saving money where we can. I mentioned there are some things, we've shifted our transportation route, so we're curious to see how that will impact state funding. Something else for you that I think is important as a board to understand, state funding is very important for us. It's our second biggest source of revenue. We are now at the guarantee. So as our property values increase, the state sees us as a wealthier community. The wealthier we get, the less funding we are able to get from the state. However, they set, when they created this new rule, they set a limit. This year, you're never going to get less than what you got in that year. We are now there. Our property tax wealth and our enrollment is declining. So those two factors have made it so that our funding is coming down according to the new formula. But they won't penalize us. We will still get that. Now, if legislature comes in and says, yeah, we probably need to fix the guarantee and get people off, that's too much money, that could really dramatically impact the district. So things to think about as you all are out and about talking with officials. The state funding formula is very important for our continued operations as we're doing it right now.
In my discussions with the legislators that I regularly meet with, they have remained committed to fully implementing the fair school funding formula, which is over the next 2 years, I believe, still, and implementing that. So I don't think at this point in time that we're going to see in the short term changes, but because of all the property tax increases across the state, there are other things I think are going to continue to be discussions, like the 20 mil floor, the guarantee. Right now, there's a pretty significant number of schools in Ohio that are on the guarantee, which means that the formula is not really working. Because, we're not going to drop down below this amount, so they're still giving us the same amount. So I think a lot of those things are still being factored in. Unless something significantly changes, I don't know that that's going to happen in terms of slashing the state budget right away, because they have publicly stated they're going to implement and fully implement the program and see how it works. So, but we just need to stay in tune to what that looks like for us.
Yes, thank you. And then the next slide, we've talked about all these items, but the other thing that we have as our unknown is we do have one further union that negotiates this year. So once we get that, we'll have at least for the next 3 years, we'll know the percentage increases for all salaries. So that's the other fluctuating factor. And of course, property tax values, we're still trying to determine what did the substitute levy do? We don't have that data yet, but hoping that will be a very positive shift for us as well.
Yeah, I think the board as a whole would be surprised if our enrollment trends stayed downward, given, 3,000 planned houses?
At least. I think it's a weird anomaly that we are currently showing a decline in enrollment when there are homes being built, but I think we're on the verge of that ballooning. So we continue to monitor it. Every time I ask our EMIS person for an update on enrollment, I'm shocked that, no, it's not a huge downturn, right? We're slightly less than we were last year.
And we graduated a pretty big class last year.
Yeah,
I
and
think this year's class is one of the biggest too, so.
And our kindergarten and first grade numbers are lower currently than they traditionally are. So we're seeing it more on the lower end. We're not replacing lower grades of students with the same number of that we're graduating. But we continue to have a lot of people move in and enroll almost daily in the office. So it feels it is very counterintuitive, right? The number of people that are showing up to enroll, but over the school year, I think that we go back up. Things happen, we drop down, we go back up. So we'll see how it plays out.
Any questions before I move on from the forecast? Okay. We're 4 months in, so this is your normal trend lines. We're charting right where we normally are at this point. So you'll see the blue line is the actual, the red line is the estimated, and that is based on the new forecast. So that is now based on the November forecast. And then the gray line is the current year actual. So very close to what we were looking at last year, very close to expected. And we'll talk about some of the differences of why the estimated and actual are not right on top of each other. We did want to talk a little bit. Right now, we're looking at 115 days cash, target being 120. And I just wanted to remind everyone that I had spoken with the CAC committee, I think the last go-around, about creating a cash balance policy. That is something that we still want to do to ensure that is 120 the right number of days, depending on the financial group that you're talking to. 90 days is very common. 120 days can be very common. It just depends on the things going on in the district. So things like how much debt do you have? Things like how many different types of revenue sources do you have? What happens if one goes away? What kind of impact does that have? We need to evaluate those things in building this policy. But part of that then is once we have the number of days, what happens if we go less than the number of days? We need to have some really good guidance of, is 120 days when we start to panic? Or is it 90? Or is it 60? Those kind of things. So that is still in the works. Just wanted to throw that out there. That is still something that we plan to do, something that we plan to bring to the CAC committee and then to the board eventually. Okay, specifically looking at revenues and expenses, we're 4 months in, so we're looking at about 33%. Revenues, we've achieved 38% due to our property taxes. We did just get our homestead rollback from the state settlement, so that's looking pretty close. And just to, as a reminder, I think I said this last month, but we depend on the property tax being very similar to what it was the prior year, but we could get that money in various months. So if I get it, you'll see the 5% decrease of the variance there. I got the state funding in November, and it doesn't show up here because I'm showing you October. Well, it's going to show as a variance. We actually got it, but last year we got it in October. That's what you're seeing here as the variance. On the expense side, we are slightly under the 33%. We're looking at 30%. The variance here is quite a bit higher. So one of the things that we noticed, purchase services are down from last year. Supplies are up from last year. We think this is timing, but it will be things that we'll monitor throughout the next few months. We think it's just, well, supplies are up because we just started school, and it'll probably trend down the more months we get into the year. Purchase services, we didn't have as many special education students right at the beginning of the year. Again, with the movements and the evaluations, we'll probably achieve that in the year. It just looks like different months. So that's why you see a big variance.
Karen, another thing that may be on purchase services is that by redoing the transportation, we were
Correct,
able to
yes.
bring some of that special transportation, which is a purchase service, back in-house to drive either on a bus or on vans ourselves. So we're not spending as much money on private transportation to the outplaced students as we were before. It probably resulted in an increase in expenditure on the transportation employee budget, but a decrease on purchase service. So
Yeah,
some of
that's
those things go hand in hand as well.
The other thing that is playing a factor into this variance, insurance increases start in December. So we collect payments for employee insurance a month in advance, so those will come into effect in December. The forecast is showing that over a 12-month period. That is not a calendar year, right? So there's some fluctuation there. You'll see some of that catch up in the next few months. That is all I
Any
have on that.
questions? Good. Thank you. B is monthly reports. C, amended appropriations. D, amended certificate of estimated resources. E is a list of donations, and we have some rather large ones this month. Very much appreciated. F, activity, purpose, and budget statement. G, preschool fees.
So I wanted to talk about this one a little bit. It's been quite a few years since we've done anything with our preschool fees. Our registrar and our EMIS employee pulled some information, which is included in your packet, of area schools and what they are charging for preschool. We are pretty low compared to everyone else. Preschool, it is a lot of special costs, and so it is an expensive program to run. So we thought this next school year, so this wouldn't go into effect until the next school year, we should probably raise those rates to be more in line with our local area schools and also our local public schools in the area. So we're raising from $220 to $250 per month tuition, and then the one-time registration fee we have at $70. we would raise that to an $80 fee.
And where does the 250 put us in the stack ranking of the other Warren County schools?
So it puts us right in the middle, almost, well, the other two public schools, Little Miami and I think Springboro are also at 250.
So Kings, Mason, Little Miami were considerably higher than 250. Monroe and Springboro were at 250. We were the lowest of the school providers in the area at the rate at which we were charging before. It's also worth, I talked to Krista Foley today, our preschool, our director in charge of that. It is a losing proposition. Like, we do not make money on preschool. Even by raising our rates, we're not going to make money on preschool. We're required to have a mixed ratio of students on an IEP and students not on an IEP. And so, this rate gets us in line. It puts us at the same place Monroe and Springboro were, but still behind Little Miami, Kings, and Mason in terms of the county and what we're charging for preschool. There are other private providers that are running that are less expensive, but they're not running with licensed teacher/intervention specialist in the classroom in some of those places. And that's a requirement that we have as a school district, so.
And there are also some private institutions that are running higher too, so.
H, 5-year forecast. Okay on that? And I is a list of then and nows. Any questions on A through H under the finance section? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Dalton?
Yes.
Mrs. Cope?
Yes.
Mr. McCutcheon?
Yes.
Mr. Gliotti?
Yes.
Mr. Lane?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Item number 8, policies. We have a motion to approve the first reading of the following 43 policies.
So moved.
Second?
Any comments, Mr. Severs?
It's a lot. I recognize it's a lot. I didn't get a chance to respond to your email today. We met last week. By we, I mean Karen and I. Our technology director was in there as well. Sometimes we update policies because, there's a law change and you're just changing. I mean, some of these are as simple as the footnote at the bottom has changed, but it's a footnote referring to another policy. They got a new number or something as random as that. I did ask Jessica to include in the board packet sort of the overview and comment section that comes from Neola. I would recommend, before reading all 43 of them, that you start with that and say, I want to know what this one is about, and going to it. It does a pretty
That
decent
would
job.
have been good advice before my lunchtime today.
I apologize if you read all of them. Some things in there, like there was a policy that was about Karen's role. Apparently, she's no longer called the secretary to the board. She was very disappointed about that. It doesn't exist in Ohio law. They took it out. There is minimum as that. A lot of these had to do with Senate Bill 29, which was the parents' right to know what kind of services and online apps and providers we're using in our school district. And then the notices about if we monitor students' access to electronic equipment. If there's specific questions, I can refer to that. If anybody
Looked like
has
there
any-
were some that were just completely crossed out and combined with others. Is that correct?
There was at least 2 where what we had previously in our board policy, it was easier for them to sort of cut the whole thing out and bring in the old policy because of how we had some things in there. So we, for example, we changed our cell phone policy before the school started this past summer in June and July. Well, that policy was in front of you again because we had to make sure in policy we listed what the consequences would be if there was a violation of that. Where before we had it but maybe the consequences weren't listed. So I don't, unless there's any specific questions, like going through all 43 of them would be futile, I think, at this point in time to highlight all of them, but I am always willing, if you have questions, to specifically speak about what one of them may be about. You'll also notice the beginning of the board packet tonight, there's a 3 sentences here at the top of the agenda. Our board policy requires us, one of our current board policy changes on bylaws says that we have to have this statement on all public notices and all agendas. That board meetings are for the purpose of conducting school district business and not to be considered a public community meeting or a community forum with back and forth. It's in the bylaws. It's actually a change that was voted on tonight, but it came from Neola. And so you'll start noticing that on the tops of the agenda. So some minor things like that, but I'm
And
willing.
number 41 on the list was the first time we've seen AI called out in our policies, I believe.
Yeah, so there was a policy, it is a new policy on artificial intelligence. Previously, it was covered under acceptable use agreement. So we have staff and students fill out an acceptable use agreement saying how they're going to use district technology. The requirement now was we had a policy on AI. It's still an acceptable use. So that's why we had to go touch acceptable use agreements as well, was because this information about AI. So, yeah.
Any other questions? Just remember, stick to the summary first.
Summary first, before you get lost in the policies. And if there's a policy question, call me. I can help you out in the future.
Perfect. Roll
It is
call.
the first reading though also.
Yes.
So if there's any questions between now and next month that you would like to address, let me know. We can discuss it still before we vote on it next month as a board.
Okay.
Okay?
Roll call, please.
Mrs. Cope?
Yes.
Mr. McCutcheon?
Yes.
Mrs. Dalton?
Yes.
Mr. Gliotti?
Yes.
Mr. Lane?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Item number 9 is public records request. Item number 10 is other educational. So I need a motion to approve item 10.
So moved.
Second.
And this is about an overnight out-of-state student trip for the varsity track athletes to attend Eastern Relays Track Invitational in Louisville, Kentucky. Any questions on that? I can tell you, I attended that last year, maybe the last 2 years, and there are kids from the entire country that come in to compete at that event. Very impressive. Roll call, please.
Mr. Lane?
Yes.
Mrs. Dalton?
Yes.
Mr. McCutcheon?
Yes.
Mr. Gliotti?
Yes.
Mrs. Cope?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Item number 11, personnel. I need a motion to approve items A through K.
So moved.
Second.
I will read through these real quick. A is retirements, B, resignations, C, employment, D is substitute employment, E is changes of status, F, supplementals, G, supplemental volunteer coaches, H is the resolution for employment of non-licensed coaches, I is volunteers, J, leave of absence, and K, long-term certified substitute teachers. Any questions?
One thing I
comments
do
on
want to
those?
point out is you'll notice that H looks different than it has typically looked in the past. Before, we just listed that there was like a resolution for employment of non-licensed coaches. And then those non-licensed coaches, they were listed in the board agenda, but they were not called out separately. As we've looked at how the best to do this, we put the resolution language there, and then we are going to begin listing those people in that section, so it is very transparent about what people it is that we're talking about there, and not on just a separate list that you guys had access to and voted on. So there's a reason for that change, just to kind of be more open about who those people were. Because we always had questions about it.
Yeah.
So we tried to make it more clear on the agenda.
And I will add, there always seems to be a need for people to coach or participate in other extracurriculars, so if you're interested.
Currently, if you have any knowledge of track and field and any desire to be a track coach, I know that our junior high and high school programs, I believe, are both still looking for spring coaches. And so that might be a way for anybody who's wants to get involved and be involved, that knows anything about running or jumping or throwing or whatever else they do. I know what they do, but if you're interested in coaching track or being around, I think we currently have some need, so.
Thank you. Any other questions? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Dalton?
Yes.
Mr. McCutcheon?
Yes.
Mr. Lane?
Yes.
Mr. Gliotti?
Yes.
Mrs. Cope?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Item number 12, board comments.
I have none.
None? I will just add that, and I'm sure most people know this, but we did lose a pillar of our school district recently. Knew Jim for a long time. Roy knew him longer than I did, but talk about a man that lifted up the community in so many ways. He'll be missed, so I'm gonna stop there before I can't go anymore. Item 13, executive session. We would like to, I need a motion to enter an executive session to consider the appointment, employment, or compensation of a public employee or official.
Second?
Roll call, please.
Mrs. Dalton?
Yes.
Mrs. Cope?
Yes.
Mr. McCutcheon?
Yes.
Mr. Lane?
Yes.
Mr. Gliotti?
Yes.
Motion carried.
And we will not be taking any action when we adjourn from executive session, so we will stop the live stream at this point. Thank you.